Welcome to Thought Exchange, where ideas are currency. I am your host, Nigel Fox, and today I've interviewed Jack Carlson, a longtime friend of mine and an entrepreneur in the automotive and tech industry. He's also a data transformation lead at Google. That took a lot of tries, a lot of takes to say correctly. Our conversation covered motivation, ambition, imposter syndrome, and even the need to be selfish. It was a fascinating conversation, and I hope you enjoy. Jack Carlson, welcome to the show.
Such an honor. The second guest, and I mean, like everybody's been talking about this show. It's all I've been hearing.
I just want to jump right into it. So, you're one of my best friends, and something I've always appreciated about you is you go after the things that you're interested in, and you're an ambitious person. And I'm curious what you think drives that ambition. Because some people they focus on like legacy or having an impact on the people around them, or sometimes financial freedom or something like that. So I'm curious where that lands for you.
Yeah, I guess a place to start is thinking that I feel like the answer to that question uh, changes a lot over time. And once you start to kind of mature and think about what really matters in life, your answer is going to change. And my answer has certainly changed over time. And I think it'll probably continue to change. As I learn more and experience more and, maybe find areas of success and realize that's not actually what I want, and then you find new motivation and find things that you care about and find a new passion area or something along the lines of that. But I guess when I was in college or growing up, I think motivation was pretty much focused on like having fun and making money. Like that's what I cared about. And I think that's changed a lot. Of what I care about, and I kind of look back at some of my experiences of like when I like defining moments of hard work, and what I actually you know, valued from those times, and I try to emulate that. So, when you're working on a project that say you're working on for hours and it's a ton of really hard work, and then you finish it and present it. Say you're selling something, or you're working on a project, and someone gets to hold your product in their hands and values it and is happy with the product, or it's just whatever. That I think when you experience that and look back and see what your hard work's able to do, that is a huge driving force for me. Is that feeling, and that's kind of what I've been chasing. And I think some examples of like when I first felt this were back in high school. My grandpa and I, we had a barbecue catering business together, and I would help him all summer, every summer. Early mornings and late nights and long, long days of being out in the sun and like in smoke and like tough working conditions. But there'd be days where we'd be up in like Westchester or Malvern at like a street festival, and we'd have a line for 2 hours straight. And we'd been cooking this food for hours and getting everything prepped for like days, and it's like such a grind, and you're just like you're lost in the moment and working and working and working, and then you see all these people with these sandwiches and they're all so happy, and then at the end of the day you like look at each other like holy shit, we just did that, and what an amazing feeling of accomplishment that was. And that was one of the first moments that I felt like, okay, that is a feeling that I really, really enjoy. Working really hard and creating something of value for other people. Um, and that feeling of satisfaction and knowing that I added value to the world, that is a big motivating factor for me. I think another point in time early in my life with that was when I was on the yearbook staff in high school, and that was kind of like my first leadership position. I was in charge of the entire team and the whole process, and doing that with we'd be at school at like 11 p.m. like 3 nights a week every week for a year. You know, all there all the time, just like grinding to make this book happen. And then we made it happen. You can still hold the book now. It's like, wow, that is such a gratifying feeling to put in so much work into something and be able to hold it and share it with people and share the memories and stuff. And I was like, that's a great feeling. I like that leadership role, and I like being able to build something like that. So, ever since those times, I've always been working for other people's companies. Um, and I'm at Google right now, and it's a little bit harder to feel connected to the work, and understand that like I'm building something that's impactful. So the work is not very motivating, and I think that's what I'm lacking right now, and why I want to make a switch and to launch my company, because I really find the motivation of going in there, building something with my hands, and giving it to people, and people finding value out of it, and sharing and learning from them, and understanding how to make it better, and just having that continuous cycle with the customer. I think that is really like a big motivating factor for me, is creating value for other people and being able to talk to those people and learn from them, and having that partnership, and making some money along the way is nice too. Having that fun freedom. I'd say top thing is building something of value, and typically when you build something of value, you're going to get a financial return. Having that financial freedom is probably a second tier thing for me. It's really that freedom to build something and connect with the customer. That's really my big motivating factor.
Yeah, no, it's definitely something that, back in high school, I definitely did not have at all. I mean, it's something that I admired about you because you were a lot more driven, um, compared to myself back then. Because I was just, I was just doing whatever.
Yeah, but then you went to the army, and then I just college.
But I think you're totally right about like the evolution of where those motivations come from. Because I think starting off, um, maybe a little bit later than you, but initially it was kind of just like, okay, I want financial freedom. Like I just want to be able to do whatever I want. I just want to have money to do whatever I want.
Mm-hmm.
And then, yeah, definitely through my work in the service, it's changed my perspective a lot on what work is,
Mm-hmm.
in the sense of, I'm sure a lot of people associate work with something you don't want to do and have to do, versus
Yep.
where it can be something that A, you want to do, or you at least find important and impactful, like you were mentioning.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Honestly, something I'm a little bit, um, I don't know if worried is the right word, but something I'm conscious of,
Mm-hmm.
you know, leaving the service, because it's going to be like the scale of what I'm doing is not going to be the same, if that makes sense, right? Because I'm not working for. I mean, it depends where I get a job, obviously, but
Mm-hmm.
the grand scheme goal of whatever corporation or company that I work for is fundamentally different than, a part of the Department of Defense of the United
Right.
States.
Right.
But I also think your your story, I guess, about kind of finding satisfaction in doing the work itself, kind of in that era with your grandfather, like just being out there, like doing it, for hours at a time,
Mm-hmm.
and also the impact that's like, you get to see the how much people enjoy the food you're making, and, um, the impact you have there. I think it definitely, it's an evolution for everybody, but it's also hard to, at least for me, stay motivated on the same things as those, root drivers change as well.
Explain what you mean by root driver. Like,
Impact is important now, more important than it used to be. So the things
mm-hmm.
that motivate you are different, even though you might be equally motivated in some sense. If before someone is motivated financially and now they're motivated by impact, or they're motivated purely by doing the thing that they enjoy doing, that's going to change the things that you can get motivated about.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of it's kind of a bridge that you don't want to burn, but you kind of need to burn, in the fact that you want to evolve what your motivation is based on, but you also don't want to evolve so quickly that you can't maintain motivation on something long enough to grow that project, or at least benefit from that
Yeah,
project.
absolutely. I mean, I think it's something you need to do like a post-mortem on, like, every 6 months or every year of like, hey, is what I'm doing actually like, is it aligned with my values of what I value? Is this really like a driving force that'll get me to where I want to be? And is that place of where I want to be actually where I want to be? And I just think it's important to think about these things, like have conversations like this. Like, are the things that you're doing now really like in service of your great goals? Um, and if you don't ask yourself that question, you might be a few years down the road where you've just been doing things on autopilot, not knowing. But I don't know. I also feel like, in terms of like the conversation of financial freedom versus, doing service for other people, like, I feel like you can dedicate your entire life to, uh, you know, being in service of other people and helping those who need help. And I find there's a lot of value in that. On the other hand, I think there's a lot, personally, I think a lot of it comes down to like the whole concept of, putting on your mask before helping someone else. Like, you need to take care of yourself before you go out and start to help other people, in my mind. That's subject to a lot of discussion, but I think, helping yourself and building up your own wealth, and building up the wealth of the people around you and your family, and building up a strong safety net, it really empowers you to help people a lot more if you have everything in your life under control. And if you're like struggling to pay rent, or like you have a shitty living situation because you're dedicating every cent of your life to helping other people, like, I don't know, it's different for everybody, but for me that's not sustainable. And I have like personal selfish individual goals that I want to attain with like a certain level of comfort in life. And then after that, I want to focus on that same idea of, I can build something of value and I can help people, um, or can make people, like, add value to society. And I want to at first build things that are financially successful, so then I can take risks of building things that might not be as financially successful while still maintaining my lifestyle, but also adding value to the world. Things that are more risky. Um, so that's kind of where I am now with what motivates me. So right now, building something that can make money, um, that also adds value to the world.
Yeah, I think, just to attack it from a slightly different direction, I agree with your point about putting on your own mask first. And it's actually a pretty common, um, I don't know exactly what to call it, but typically in like poorer religious communities, um, it's taught to be, generous, obviously, right? Give your stipend to the church, or not stipend, but tithing, is that what it is? Um, and stuff like that. But what's often missed is that if you are able to, like you said, build yourself up, then down the road you're able to give more to that organization. You're able to give more to that church. And I think
Exactly.
as well, you can, you owe the world to, like, do your best, right? At least in my opinion. I think you should be doing the best at whatever you're trying to accomplish. And by putting your own goals on hold, you're denying the world whatever you have to offer, by putting on some role that you feel you're supposed to be playing, instead of, because there's no way to fill someone else's role, fill some ancillary role from a third party, as well as you can be yourself. This is not going to happen. There's no way to do that. Now, it can be hard to be yourself too, but there's no way, the pinnacle, the maximum of being able to really fall into who you are and the things that you're passionate about and the things that you want to give, the the ROI on that is so much higher than trying to fill that role in some attempt to be what you think other people want you to be or what you think people need from you or something like that.
You can really give your full self if you are taken care of at home, you know? Like
Yeah.
I can be fully present if I have the comforts that I want. Like I'm never going to be able to not deny myself the fact that I want certain things. And if I'm giving my time to a cause and not being able to get those things for myself, like I'm not going to be fully present. I'm not going to give all of my effort. Um, and I totally agree with your whole point of like we have a duty, a service to be our best. And if you're doing things that are against that goal of like not learning what you should be and not dedicating yourself to being a lifelong learner and building yourself up to be a more productive person in society by doing other things, I think like he's also like when you're making money, you're learning a lot of stuff. Like that's just a byproduct of building wealth is you have to become smart for the most part. Like you have to learn an industry, and that knowledge, in most cases, unless you're doing something unethical, is only going to help society because you're able to bring more knowledge to the table and help other people build themselves up and be the best self they can be. Um,
Yeah.
so, I think there's definitely value in putting yourself first in a lot of cases, and it's like inherently evil to want things for yourself. Um, and that's something that I've come to accept because for a while I felt guilty about things that I have, and that guilt really doesn't get you anywhere. Um, you really should just like take the opportunity that you have, use it, and once you have what you need, help other people after that.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think I dealt with something parallel to that. And I think, one sec, something parallel to that in the idea of feeling guilty or feeling shame around wanting certain things or wanting to achieve certain things
Mm-hmm.
and pursuing that instead of, I don't know, doing something that people tell you should do or doing something that is smaller in scope because for whatever pressure it is, like, oh, my family will think this, or my friends are going to
Mm-hmm.
think I'm trying to get too good for them, or my teacher said I was a bad student and I won't amount to anything. Like, kind of shirking those labels and pressures, and some of those are imagined external pressures too,
Mm-hmm.
right? Some of those are things you think other people want from you, or think you want your parents want you to be a certain way, or whatever it may be. So being able to shirk those and then be comfortable with, like, yeah, I do want to be wealthy, and not a little wealthy, like very wealthy. Yes,
No.
I want to have an impact on a larger scale than just my household, and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. There's this I not idea. It's a phenomenon that ants have, um, called a death spiral. Sounds super morbid. Kind of is morbid, but essentially, like, ants are essentially blind, so they walk and they follow pheromone trails.
Yeah.
And if ants happen to walk in a circle in the right
Mm-hmm.
way, then all of these ants, hundreds and hundreds of ants, will just walk in a circle. And I mean, you should
Mm-hmm.
look it up
I've seen
after
it.
this. Yeah, yeah, and it just looks wild.
I saw a video the other day, like all around a speaker, and it's like
Nice. Yeah, just like
a
a
bunch of
rave.
trans.
Yeah, but literally, they'll walk until they die, and it's because they're
Yeah.
following someone else's path. They're following everyone else around them, and people aren't ants, but we're subject to the same social pressures in the sense
Mm-hmm.
that you might idealize someone else's path or idealize um, what someone else wants for you, or you see what your peers are doing and think that's what you have to do, and just get lost in it and just completely
Yeah.
lose your path.
Yeah. I feel like that just leads people to so much like just adequate lifestyle, just like, or not even lifestyle, but just like it leads people to just stay in the median, and it just leads to so much mediocrity in the world because it's a lot easier to go down a path that's already been laid. And, if everyone else is doing it and everyone else seems happy, and in reality, everyone's probably all having the same doubts you are because, we're a little smarter than ants. We think about these things. And I totally agree that, I mean, yeah, I think we're both kind of on the same page that like forging that new path sounds like a lot more fun, to be honest.
Yeah.
Like scary, but fun, and going to the unknown. Like that's just fun.
Yeah, it's a good, story at the end of the day. And I think, the average American, I don't know the exact statistics off the top of my head, but the average American has like less than $1,000 in their bank account. They're not happy
Hmm.
with their job. They're not happy with their relationship. Like you don't want to be the median. So don't do
No,
what the median does. Don't fall
no,
into these tropes of, oh, I'm just gonna not rock the boat because that's the easiest thing to do. Well, if you want to do the easy thing, you're gonna get, the lowest quality results at the end of the
yeah,
day.
exactly, exactly.
I think the point you mentioned about, doing something cool, or it being more fun to forge your own path, kind of links in with a conversation I had on a previous episode of the podcast, which was about stories and how they, the role they play and stuff like that in our society. And I think
Mm-hmm.
part of that in what we discussed is like you want to be able to look back on your life and be like, that was a fucking cool story. Like I did this thing and I did this thing and I did this thing. You don't want to look back and be like, oh, I wish I did this thing. I wish I did this thing. Even if it's a fuck up, you know what I mean? Even my biggest mistakes are at least cool stories and lessons learned to catapult me forward.
Yep.
At least for me, kind of the perspective that I view a lot of the things that I want to accomplish is in the format of a story, in the sense that, as I asked you earlier on, like, do you want to accomplish things for the sake of money or for the sake of, um, impact or whatever it is? Definitely one of mine is for the sake of the story. Like,
Yeah.
what is the cool shit that I can do and will look back on and be satisfied? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it too for me, and I think that helps me think about it actually, because you want to have a big book, and all those mistakes that you make, that's like one step back, two steps forward. Like you're just creating more. I mean, you're just like connecting more, more of your brain together of like how things work, and if you don't do those things, you're not going to learn, and you're making that story that much richer. And more exciting, and taking those risks is just a lot more fun, man. And it's the way to do it. And I think just like I'm ready to quit my job and move halfway across the world because I really just want to be thrown in the deep end. Because I got plenty I can fall back on. I built myself a safety net, but now it's like I want to go in the deep end and figure out how to get out, and come out on top. And I think there's gonna be some great stories along the way because the media, like you said, like the median's that's boring and not very it's not very valuable. There's not too much value in it.
Yeah.
At least not for us. It could be different for other people who have different values, but the books that we read and the knowledge that you and I are trained on now, it's not satisfactory. And I think when you open yourselves up to see what actually can be done and understand like there are different ways to this stuff, like you have such a bigger appetite for ambition once you understand what's out there. And like I was talking about this morning, um, and just how like that whole article you sent about cities and ambition, and really thinking about that, how like yeah, in Chicago, I'm not really surrounded by like-minded people, and it's really difficult to understand what opportunities are out there if you don't know what exists. and it's really hard to know what exists if there aren't people around you talking about it. And it's the same with books. Like, if you don't read the books that have these stories, if you don't read the stories of people doing crazy things, you don't even know if it's possible. Like that, you don't know what the like. You might think like, oh yeah, he walked on the moon. But like, how did an astronaut become an astronaut? Like, what did it actually look like? You know, is that actually possible? Some things are like more in reach than you think, and you'll always assume things are out of reach unless you just do the research. And people are so scared of doing work. Like, you gotta just roll up your sleeves and put the work in sometimes, you know? Get over yourself. And whenever people say, like, you know, if I had this apartment, and I had this space, I could be a better musician because I have more room. Or, like, if I had this phone or if I had this, like, CRM software, my business would be that much better. I'm like, dude, you're the only person in your way. Like, you need to get over yourself because the person who did make that thing happen, they didn't have that stuff either. They figured it out. So you just need to put the work in and do it yourself. Otherwise, you're not going to get anything you want.
The idea that obstacles are in the way is, I think, just maybe not a misnomer, but just a falsehood. Like, obstacles are the path. The thing that you
Yeah,
see as in your way is literally how you do the thing.
that's how you do it. It's just such a victim mentality. And not to, shit on people, but like, it's just, you just need to rethink it. Like, I think that's a great way to put it, that the obstacle is the path. Like, you have to do that. That's part of the journey.
Yeah.
Like, you got to put the work in. And you, as like a really proficient musician and producer, like, you've put the work in. You've done the hours to become good. And someone who's not good is going to think, man, if only I had that software, I could do it. Jay Dilla worked with like $20 of software, and he's one of the best of all time. Like,
Yeah.
it's the way it is, The obstacles are the path. I like that.
It's also connected to this another falsehood I think surrounds motivation, um, in the sense that what motivation really is. Because, people can say, like, oh, I'm feeling motivated today, like, I'm going to get a lot
Hmm.
done. And I think to some extent that's true, but I don't think what they're feeling is really motivation. I think what they're feeling is, just excitement or whatever it may be,
Yeah.
some parallel feeling. But true motivation is doing it when you don't want to fucking do it. And
Yeah.
if you are always going to be searching for
Yeah.
feeling motivated before you can actually do the thing, you're
Hmm.
never going to accomplish anything.
Totally agree. Yeah, I was curious to hear more of your thoughts on this, as being someone in the army. Like, I feel like the real motivator and like the way to capture motivation is by being a disciplined person. If you're not a disciplined person, you're not going to be able to be motivated. I'm curious, like, through the army, like, what your take on that is.
I think that to some extent motivation is, or the layman's concept of motivation is kind of just not real,
Hmm.
in the sense that if you're disciplined, you'll simply do something.
Yeah.
It's not like, oh, like, I'm going to try. Like, there's
Yeah.
no, you don't, there's trying something is not real. Like, you either do it or you don't do it.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no black and white. Like, trying is just not doing it until you've done it or quitting
Yeah.
along the way.
Yeah.
Um, and especially in, an industry, I call it an industry, the military industrial complex, that's as, serious as this, it's just, it's just a no excuse mentality. Like, I
Right.
get that it sucks. Like, oh, I get that this sucks. I get that you have to work late every single day for months. I get it, but you're going to do
Yeah.
it because that's what the end goal
That's what,
requires.
yeah. That's what you're doing at this point of your life. Like, that is what's happening, and trying to fight it is pointless because it's going to be even, I feel like it'll be even worse if you try to fight it because you're, first of all, you're in a contract, but also it's like, it's just going to be uncomfortable. You're going to take a big left turn in life and go down a path you don't want to go down because going against what you're supposed to do, how's that going to get you anywhere? You got to put in the work. And yeah, I agree with you a ton. And I think you framed it really well. And I feel like we have like a existential problem, at least in America, of the idea that you brought up, that motivation is like being excited for something, versus motivation is really just putting in the work. And the thing separating you from your goals is yourself and your ability to sit down and just do it. Just like that video of what's his face, um, what's his name? You ever see the video with Shia LaBeouf on the green screen and he's
Oh
just
yeah,
screaming?
just do it.
That's
Yeah,
honestly, I love that video, man.
yeah,
I think
it's
that's
fantastic.
fantastic. It's so true. Just it's annoying as a Nike is, but like just fucking do it, man. Sit down and stop being a little bitch and do the work. You know,
Yeah,
you just gotta do the work, or else nothing's gonna happen.
I uh, I just happen to have a quote regarding this topic, so I'm going to read it off. It's by C.S.
Mm,
Lewis, who
mm,
wrote like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. I think
mm,
is what most people are familiar with. But he's written a lot of other really cool introspective existential stuff. Um, but if men had postponed the search for knowledge and beauty until they were secure, the search would never have begun. We are mistaken when we compare war with normal life. Life has never been normal. Even those periods which we think most tranquil, like the 19th century, turn out on closer inspection to be full of cries, alarms, difficulties, emergencies. And there's more to it, and I encourage people to look up the quote. But essentially, he's just going on about how, like, people were, pursuing their passions and doing the work in the worst of times and the best of times. He
mm.
talks about how, like, people are reciting poetry at the walls of Troy and stuff like this. Like, there's no perfect time to
Yeah,
do the thing. You just have to do the thing. And if you
yeah,
always wait for the perfect time, then maybe you'll get 5 minutes of work done, and then that'll
yeah.
be it.
And frankly, the idea of the perfect time is like a fleeting idea where typically the longer you wait, the harder it's going to be to find that perfect time.
Yeah. I mean,
I like that.
you can create the perfect time, because the perfect time really, at least in my mind, it facilitates doing the work. So if you're doing the work, then it's perfect.
Yeah,
That's the only prerequisite that at least
I
I
think
have.
that's a good way of looking at it. Yeah.
I wanted to shift a little bit to back to the ambition part.
Hmm.
Do you see your long-term ambitions as kind of singular and focused, or are they like multi-domain? Are they pretty broad,
Yeah,
cooking, tech, whatever it is?
I think they're pretty broad. I think a newer one that I've had over the past year, um, so I've started to really understand like what's possible, um, and I always like look up to like you watch people on YouTube with like big TED talks and like, oh my God, that was so inspirational. Like, I love that that person was able to share their amazing experience with the world. And I gained so much from it. And then I kept thinking to myself, like, well, why can't I do that? Um, and now one of my larger goals is to build up a portfolio of expertise and having a good story, like you mentioned, like be like having that background of something that is people want to learn from, and then being able to have a platform to share that with people. Like I want to my one of my new goals and ambitions in life, and it's a longer term goal, is to be like a public speaker and to like share ideas with a broad audience. That is something I'm really focused on as a longer term thing, because I think one of the prerequisites for that was having that experience, and having something to talk about. And I don't really have that yet. Like my audience right now is small of people who care what I would want to say, but there's like three circles of like impact you can have, and that you need to focus on. Like the first circle is um, yourself. Like you need to take care of yourself, and then the next circle is like the people that you know and the people that you care about, and how you can impact them by providing value to them. And then the third circle is strangers, and like being able to have impact on strangers and better their lives, and through whatever whatever you do, whatever you do best. So like, say I'm like really good at like starting a company or something like that. Like that's the third circle, and that's what I want to achieve. Is being able to have an audience of people that I don't know that I can impact for the better in my field. And my field, I think, is going to be varied, and I want it to be varied because I want to do as many different things as possible. I want to start this tech business, and then maybe like sort of restaurant or like open a racetrack or like something crazy. But just like try a bunch of different things and gain a really wide range of experience so I could share it with people just to show that the nonlinear path is like the path you should take because it's all the most fun. So that's something I'm still trying to flesh out, but that's more of a longer term goal.
Mm-hmm.
How about you?
I think the prospect of having an impact on a broader range of people than just the people is definitely something that's important to me. And it's not necessarily like I have no interest in like fame
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah.
or notoriety, but I do want to be able to impact people in a positive way and spread ideas and have constructive conversations. I know that I will want to do that regardless of how um, career wise or financially I'm pulled in different directions. I know that I will always want to do those things.
Mm-hmm.
And that's part of the reason I started the podcast, because I'm never going to look back and think, wow, I wish I had less interesting conversations. I wish I
Yeah.
thought more surface level on all of these different topics
Yeah.
and talk to less people.
Mm-hmm.
And I think just having conversations that aren't, for lack of a better word, small talk, that aren't just skimming the surface on, oh, like what did you do today, or what do you want to be, like
Mm-hmm.
diving into things. I think even just having that from a third party perspective, where someone can just watch you have a nuanced conversation. I mean, you never know how that's going to impact me, because I've listened to podcasts, I've listened to TED Talks and stuff, and it'll be the random tidbit that they laid out, or just the way they happen to frame something that completely changes my mindset around something.
Totally.
And I think that that's extremely valuable. I think human communication is to me one of the most important things in life. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Kind of lost my train of thought there.
Yeah. I mean, I love the idea of just like having the conversation because so often we just we don't like, especially with like all the people we spend a lot of time with, like it's easy to not talk about things, um, or easy to stay surface level, and I think it's so important to go above and beyond. Yeah, I totally agree. One of my like younger ambitions, and it's not possible anymore, but I always wanted to be a guest on Top Gear. Like that has always been a goal of mine. I always wanted to be in that studio and like talk. um, they don't air anymore, but I want to be on, like come and talk to those people that I admire so much, and also get to like just share my philosophy on things. Like, I mean, I remember having this conversation back in like high school, and I still think it's a lot of value to it, and I think it's true that like everybody has their art, and everyone's art is in a different form. One of your arts is music, and being able to do that. Um, I don't have that specific skill set, or not that I also really don't have too much interest in it. But like Inky can design, and like whoever else, like Ellie can act, and things like that, or like mathematics even, like that's an art. And I feel like everyone needs to like find their art, and art can take so many different forms. And I mean, one of what I think I want my art to be and what I enjoy is like storytelling, and trying to like have those conversations, and like writing a book one day would be really fun, I think. I don't know what it would be, but it would be nonfiction because I don't like fiction. But, um,
Yeah.
that I like the art of storytelling. I think it's so fascinating, and what I want to pursue. But I think everybody has some sort of version of art in them. And that's mine.
Yeah, I agree. I think everything is art essentially. And
Hmm.
there's different ways to frame it, but there's nuance in everything. And if you talk to someone who's passionate about that niche, you're going to understand why it's art. You're going to understand why pricing strategy is art, how marketing is art, advertisement, how software design or the
Hmm.
nuances of actual programming. Like all of it is artistic and nuanced in a way that is only different from the strokes on a painting in application, right?
Hmm.
That's
Hmm.
the only way that it's different. The canvas of software programming is it's just different, but it's still
Yeah.
fundamentally human creativity and ingenuity and expression being
Yeah.
relayed.
Absolutely.
You mentioned like wanting to pursue public speaking, and also like not feeling like you're necessarily at a point where you would feel comfortable um, filling that role, I guess, or pursuing that. Not necessarily stage presence wise, but just you want to make sure you have the experience to back it up, I guess. Is that kind of the
Yeah. I don't know I don't think I have what I want to talk about yet. Like I still think I'm trying to figure that out. Um, I want to go abroad and learn from other cultures and try something crazy, so then I can talk about it. My experience is pretty traditional so far, so I want to go down a non-trad path and be able to present that.
well, pursuing that I think is a great idea, but also it kind of falls into um, I guess not feeling ready to do something or imposter syndrome in some sense. In the fact, like
Mm.
if you were to step into that shoe before you think you're ready, you'd kind of feel like, am I really ready? Or regardless of what it is, when you put into a situation that's new, for a little bit you're
Mhm.
going to feel like an imposter because you haven't done it before, right? I mean,
Mhm. Mhm.
I've had that sentiment with the podcast in the sense that you know who am I to like record videos on um, advice and perspective. But at the end of the day, like, your own path is nuanced and someone can get something from it. You know what I mean? And sure, these are going to be the worst interviews of my career because they're the first couple. You know what I mean? And I
That's fine.
totally embrace that. Even though I don't think that they're bad, it's like, I'm going to get better. But I'm
Yeah.
also happy to document the process along the way until I've made even more success and have an
Mhm.
even more interesting story to tell. Um,
Yeah.
because as we talked about earlier, like I don't want to wait for things to feel perfect for me to do it because I've definitely suffered from that before, and after realizing that, it's something that I am like very conscious of, I guess.
Yeah. Perfect is the enemy of good. You got to just start. Got to do it. Totally agree. Yeah. No, I mean, I feel like I've started to and it might just be that's the way imposter syndrome is, but I've started to just like overcome it and to not give a shit about it anymore. And maybe that's because I'm less of an imposter now, or maybe that's because I've thought that mindset isn't valuable to me. Um, and in a lot of senses, I can fake it and figure it out later if I need to. Um, but it's not something I concern myself with as much anymore. And I feel like it's a mindset, and you are the person in control of the thoughts that come into your head, whether to listen to them or not. Um, it's just energy passing through your brain, and your conscious mind can say, "Well, that's stupid," or not, and you have to have that self awareness and self confidence to say like that is not in service of my goal. Those thoughts, And if there's more of an underlying issue that's making those thoughts more apparent, then you need to address it and you can't ignore it. And I think just being able to be self-aware and be hard on yourself to say like, okay, why am I thinking this stuff so much? What's the root issue? Am I actually being an imposter? Well, maybe I should read those couple of like product documentation, um, product docs or whatever, or maybe I should like join that meeting and speak up a bit and be uncomfortable, and that's how you're going to learn. But if you just say like, oh, I'm an imposter, and then just worry about that, and then just keep on going and like not addressing things, like, well, you might be an imposter, and there's ways to combat that by, like we've talked about, putting the work in, because there's no imposter that is a hard worker. Like the person who is working is not an imposter, and because they're the ones who are doing the work. But if you're just sitting there not doing the work, then, face facts, you might be an imposter. And it's time we stop being so nice all the time and saying everyone's special and it's okay. It's okay. It's not always okay. All right. And that's something that's really, I've learned a lot from being at Google, of what I call toxic positivity, a term that I've coined myself at Google, where everyone is way too nice and it's impossible to get feedback from anybody because of the fear of like retribution, or just like being not positive in any circumstance is like bad. So like, everyone always is like, I've heard such great things about your work, and like, and you shit maybe from that project, or like, everyone is just, no one will give you real feedback. And I think it's extremely dangerous, because you're not creating an environment for growth. And the whole idea of like imposter syndrome, well, I'm feeling this. Well, like, well, maybe you should put a little bit more work into this area. Maybe you should do this, instead of just ignoring the fact and saying like, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. It's not always okay. And you need to just face facts and understand that the world is not an easy place, and you have to put the work in. And I mean, I keep harping back on this point, but I think it's so valuable that like feeling sorry for yourself and all that complaining, like, it's not going to get you anywhere. Like no one's going to give you a hand in those situations. You got to pick yourself up and go against the wall that's like facing you. Like you just got to do it yourself.
There's quite a few things I want to hit on that, but first off, like your point about saying it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, like using common phrases like that is the enemy of critical thought,
Mm-hmm.
and it's something that I've really consciously controlled over the past like year or so, is moving away from common phrases or reactionary phrases like, "Oh, how you doing? Oh, I'm okay." Or
Mm-hmm.
like, "Oh, I'm upset. I'm upset. It's okay. It's okay. It didn't bother me." Like
Yeah.
intentionality behind your words, not just throwing words out there, so that as a person, me personally as a man, my words mean something, that they don't feel like, "Oh, he's just the kind of person who, you know, says things he doesn't mean." At the end of the day, I think your word is extremely important.
Mm-hmm.
And another part of that exercise is just being honest, even when it's
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable, and just being like, "No, you did a bad job on this. I need you to redo
Yeah.
it." Or,
Yeah.
um, and it also reflects in the other way, because when you're honest, it means all of your feedback is valuable, not just your negative feedback sucks. So when I say you did a really good job on this,
It actually means something.
it actually means something. It's
Right.
not a um, just a flippant phrase to throw out there because I need to feel safe because I'm uncomfortable with silence.
You're avoiding a hard conversation,
Yeah.
you know.
Your point about faking it, I also really like, because I really believe in faking it till you make it.
Yeah.
It depends on the implementation, but it's something that I've done in the past for sure, is just I'm going to put myself in a situation where maybe I know I'm not ready for, in the
Mm-hmm.
sense that I don't have all the skills acquired yet, but I can, of course, learn them,
Yeah.
and just roll with the punches. And I think that's a big part of dealing with imposter syndrome is maintaining a student mentality,
Mm-hmm.
maintaining the fact that, you know, even experts don't know everything, and true experts know they don't know everything. There's studies on the confidence people have in their arguments or their views, and I forget what it's called, but essentially, as someone is more educated and more experienced in a subject area, the less confident they are in their expertise or knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And, so obviously, the more ignorant you are, the more confident you come off because you have more faith in your answer because you don't know what the hell you're talking about. But I think taking the fake it till you make it properly requires humility. And that's what gets you
Yeah.
away from being an imposter is the fact that you're going to try and you acknowledge that you're going to fail. And you also have to ask questions while you're failing and not just be like, oh yeah, I just messed up. Like it won't, that was just a
Yeah.
mishap.
Yeah.
I think those are the foundations of getting away from imposter syndrome while you're trying to make progress.
Yeah. I think there's two things really stuck out for me there. One was like, going into something not having all the tools you need and like not knowing everything. A lot of cases, like the only way you're going to learn those gaps is by putting yourself in that position. Like there aren't necessarily like an online course to figure out those couple of little things because A, it might be a new path, or B, that's just that is the method of learning those things. And if you avoid faking it, then you might never be able to learn those things. And so like with that argument, fake it until you make it, the concept is, arguably the only way to do certain things. Because if you try to have all the knowledge before going into something, well, how is that possible? You can't, like, unless you've done it before, which is, you wouldn't be an imposter if you've done it before. Um, and the second thing, uh, you said at the end, and I'm blanking on it.
Honesty, being a student.
But on that student point, like I think that's really important as well. Like that's something at Google. Like one of the things about joining is you have to be a lifelong learner, and I think that's so important. I remember now you were talking about humility, and I think that is such an integral part of this because, and like like speaking from my personal experience, I feel like uh, when I was younger, I had such a um, I would never admit I was wrong because I was like, you have to know everything. And I would be so uncomfortable of admitting I was wrong to the point of like saying like, just like making up some bullshit lie to like say that like, oh yeah, no, I thought you meant this or something, and just like avoiding being wrong and having that humility where now it is like flipped, where now I really enjoy and I'm happy when I can admit that I didn't know something or that I did something wrong and like having that humility because it's something that's hard to come by and like it's so refreshing when someone's humble and admits when they're wrong. It's like, oh, okay, this person is truthful and they're willing to learn and you don't see it, like I said, you don't see it very often. I think it's so valuable. And now I'm like kind of almost happy when I can say, oh, I didn't know that. You were right. I was wrong. Can you teach me? Like, I feel like those are such valuable moments. And when you restrict yourself from those moments by not being humble, you miss out on like great opportunities. And also, people I think respect you a lot when you admit that you're wrong, especially when it's pretty obvious that you're wrong and you won't admit it. Like, that's bad and that's really immature. And I think it's just part of growing up is when you're able to admit that you're wrong. And I think it's so valuable.
People do respect it, except the kind of people you don't want respect from. You know what I mean? The only
Yeah.
kind of person who's gonna eat at you for admitting that you're wrong and trying to understand and grow from that experience is not the kind of person you want to be around anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'm blanking on what you said.
Learning, humility. Yeah,
It's been a long day.
it has. A long week.
So I was mentioning today, like I went through a class today, or I
Mhm.
finished a class today. It was a Security Plus course, and we had this um, chief chief warrant officer, which if you know what that means, you know what that means. If you don't, you don't. It doesn't matter. They're supposed to be technical experts, right? So there's
Mm-hmm.
it's the most senior person in the class with the most technical experience. Um, and the class has been going on for a couple weeks. Today was the final exam for a certification, and throughout the class, I definitely got the sense like that he was just like, oh, like I don't need to be here. I know all this stuff. Like in the way that he answered questions, and the way that he would pseudo correct people.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I get this sense a lot from people in the service sometimes, especially senior people.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like this overconfidence, and
Mm-hmm.
the you're supposed to be a lifelong learner in the military too. It's one of the principles of leadership or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely see a lot of people lose that, and he did like one of the worst exam scores in the class. He failed, and I'm just like, dude, not only are you putting on this persona of like I know everything, like I'm not going to ask questions in class. It's
Mm-hmm.
also like you're coming to the material, right? And if you're someone who cares about the material, if you're someone who's passionate about what you're working on, why in the world would you come into that thinking I already know everything and I don't need to know more if this is what you truly want to do? Like there's no there's no way that in 60 years I'm going to look at music and be like, yeah, I know everything there is to know.
Yeah.
There's no
No.
chance.
Sounds like somebody who failed up, just got the promotion and were in a job that they had and should have stayed at and got a promotion they should not have gotten and were not ready for. And yeah, failing up. Interesting stuff. And yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, I am always so ready to learn more and more about an industry because, like, unless you are the person who built something, and even then, like, you're not going to know it all. And there's always more to learn. And always just having your filter open to learning more is just so key. And I wish I had that mentality, or at least was like self-aware of that mentality more in school when I was like forced to learn, you know. And now it's like I want to now that's actually been ignited in me. Um, Maybe we should have kids in labor camps, and then when they're out of labor camps, they can go and learn and go to school afterward, because that's
Yeah.
when my learning wanted to happen.
It's interesting. I've well, there are two things. First of all, there's you mentioned failing up. There's this concept. It's called the Peter Principle, in
Yeah,
where
yeah, yeah,
yeah, in
yeah.
hierarchical systems where you get, you know, a raise means you promote.
Hmm.
People are always promoted to their level of incompetence, right? Because
Yeah,
they hit
yeah.
that perfect level where they're doing it and they're killing
Hmm.
it, and because they're killing it, they get promoted and then they fucking suck. And you see
Yeah.
that a lot in
Shitty
because
company.
it's a very strict hierarchy.
You see with Meta, I mean, look at their earnings; they're up 20% in one day. You know why? Because Zuck went in and saw that all of these great individual contributors were all promoted to people managers, and they had to hire four people to do the job of them because they were the best individual contributor. And then that person is managing four people. You have way too many people in your staff, and the best performers are now people managers not doing the work. And you have all this bureaucracy and all this extra headcount, and it just makes for a mess and really hard to get things done. And he flattened the org, and now the stock is crushing it. Like, that's a huge laying off 25% of the staff. You know, as painful as it might be to some people, which is another conversation. You can't just have all of your entire life just based off your job. If you're at a tech company, you should be smarter than that. Um, Laying off all those people was the best decision they could have done, and it's reflected in their stock, in their earnings, and their stock price of yesterday. Like, there's the process of hiring the best, and then when they're the best at that, to make them manage people who do that, it's inherently flawed, and it just makes for a bad system.
No, I absolutely agree. It's very common in hiring structures,
Yeah,
across the board, regardless of industry. You said something else prior to that,
learning,
and I'm trying to remember what it was.
school.
Part of what I was going to say was about school, and for school, it's kind of, you have to be in the right mindset to be there.
Hmm.
And, part of the reason I left school when I did is because I knew I was not in the right mindset to be there, and I was not gonna spend that money and time. And it also went back to, that Paul Graham essay about, ambition in cities, in the sense that I did not relate to the people around me. I didn't relate to their goals and their ambitions. I didn't relate to their means of getting there either, which just made everything so much harder to accomplish that I wanted to accomplish.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that every, despite the mistakes that we make in our past, and, maybe we didn't utilize the education that we had when we were younger or take advantage of it fully, all of those things are just, they're part of the story. You know what I mean? They're part of the story in the sense. Now I know, don't make this mistake. When I have these resources, don't waste it.
Exactly. I totally agree. You can't change the past. You might as well just learn from it and say, like, all right, when I have that opportunity again, I will make a different decision.
Well, thanks, Jack. Thanks for coming on. I appreciate
Thanks for
your
having
time.
me
Had a
on.
good conversation.
That was a lot of fun. I didn't have expectations going in, and it exceeded my expectations. Great conversation.
It was great having you, and I'll have you back on sometime.
Sweet. When you have 1 billion listeners.
Thank you for joining me today on Thought Exchange. I appreciate your time, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. Stay tuned for more episodes wherever you listen to your podcasts, and I hope to see you soon. As always, keep an open mind.